Whispers in the cornfields. The summer of 1965 was one I'll never forget. I was just a teenager then, living with my family on a farm in rural Iowa. Our farmhouse was surrounded by vast cornfields that stretched out endlessly under the hot Midwestern sun. It was a peaceful life, until that summer brought something dark and chilling to our doorstep. I remember the night it began. It was a typical humid evening, the crickets chirping loudly outside as the sun dipped below the horizon. I was in my room, reading a worn paperback by the dim light of a bedside lamp, when I first heard the whispers. At first, I dismissed them as the wind rustling through the cornstalks, but the whispers persisted, faint and indistinct, like voices carried on a breeze. Curiosity got the better of me, and I ventured out onto the porch, peering into the darkness of the fields. The moonlight cast eerie shadows across the swaying corn. The air was thick with a strange energy, a palpable sense of unease that sent a chill down my spine. I strained to hear the whispers again, but they had faded into silence. The next day, unease lingered like a shadow over the farm. My father, a stoic man of few words, seemed distracted as he tended to the crops. My mother, usually cheerful and bustling about the kitchen, wore a furrowed brow as she chopped vegetables for supper. That night, the whispers returned. This time, they were clearer, more insistent. They seemed to come from the very heart of the cornfields, drawing me inexorably towards them. Against my better judgment, I grabbed a flashlight and slipped out into the night. The cornfield loomed before me, the stalks rustling softly in the breeze. The moon was full and bright overhead, casting eerie shadows that danced across the ground. I followed the whispers deeper into the maze of corn, my heart pounding in my chest. Suddenly, the air grew cold around me. The whispers coalesced into voices, whispers of sorrow, of longing, of despair. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light through the dense rows of corn. And then I saw it, a figure standing amidst the stalks, barely visible in the moonlight. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered white dress that fluttered in the night breeze. Her hair hung in dark tendrils around her pale face, which was twisted in anguish. She reached out to me, her hand trembling as if pleading for help. I stumbled back in shock, my breath catching in my throat. The woman's eyes locked onto mine, filled with a deep sadness that chilled me to the core. Without a word, she turned and disappeared into the cornfield, leaving only a haunting echo of her whispers behind. I ran back to the farmhouse, my heart racing and mind reeling. I tried to tell my parents what I had seen, but they dismissed it as an overactive imagination. But I knew what I had witnessed was real, a presence from another realm that had crossed paths with our world. Night after night, the whispers continued, drawing me back to the cornfields. Each time, I glimpsed the woman, her presence growing more tangible, yet her words remaining elusive. I felt compelled to unravel the mystery, to understand why she lingered in that lonely stretch of land. As summer drew to a close, the whispers finally ceased. The woman's apparition faded into memory, leaving me with a lingering sense of awe and dread. I never saw her again, but her haunting presence stayed with me, a reminder that the Midwestern plains held secrets far deeper than the cornfields could ever reveal. To this day, I wonder about the woman in the cornfields. Was she a lost soul searching for peace, or a harbinger of something darker lurking in the shadows? I may never know the truth, but her whispers continue to echo in the recesses of my mind, a haunting melody from a summer long past. And so ends my tale of the whispers in the cornfields, a chilling reminder that sometimes the quietest places hold the loudest secrets. The shadows of Pike Place. It was the summer of 1997, and I had just moved to Seattle for a fresh start. The city was vibrant, buzzing with the grunge scene, coffee culture, and the constant drizzle that seemed to wash everything in a muted grey. I found a small apartment near Pike Place Market, a charming yet slightly worn place that seemed perfect for my new beginning. The first few weeks were idyllic. I spent my days exploring the market, sipping coffee at quaint cafes, and soaking in the eclectic mix of street performers, artisans, and tourists. But as the novelty wore off, I began to notice something strange. It started with the shadows. My apartment was on the second floor of an old building with creaky wooden floors and drafty windows. At night, the city lights cast long, eerie shadows that danced across my walls. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but soon I began to see shapes in the darkness, figures that seemed to move with a life of their own. One particularly rainy evening, as I was lying in bed reading, I noticed a shadow in the corner of my room. It was different from the others, darker, more defined. It looked like a person, standing still and watching me. I sat up, my heart pounding, and flicked on the light. The shadow vanished instantly, leaving me feeling foolish. But the next night, it was back. This time, I could see it more clearly. A tall figure, with what appeared to be a wide-brimmed hat and a long coat. It didn't move, but I felt its eyes on me, cold and piercing. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. Days turned into weeks, and the shadow kept appearing. Sometimes it was in the corner of my room. Other times it loomed over my bed. I began to lose sleep, my nerves fraying with each passing night. I told a few friends about it, but they laughed it off, saying it was probably just stress from the move. One night, desperate for answers, I decided to confront the shadow. I stayed up late, waiting for it to appear. When it finally did, I forced myself to get out of bed and approach it. As I stepped closer, the air grew colder, and a sense of dread washed over me. I reached out, my hand trembling, and passed it through the dark shape. It felt like plunging my hand into ice water. That's when I heard the whisper, a low, raspy voice, barely audible, but unmistakable. "Leave," it said. "This place is not yours." I stumbled back, my heart racing, and the shadow seemed to grow darker, more menacing. I turned on every light in the apartment, but the feeling of being watched persisted. That night, I barely slept, haunted by the whisper and the shadow's presence. The next day, I did some research on the building. I discovered that it had once been a boarding house in the early 1900s, notorious for its connection to several disappearances and unsolved murders. Rumor had it that the place was haunted by the spirit of a man who had gone mad and killed several residents before disappearing himself. The more I learned, the more I felt the weight of the shadow in my apartment. It wasn't just a trick of the light or my imagination. It was something real, something malevolent. I decided I had to leave. I packed my things and found another apartment across town. On my last night in the old place, as I was closing the door behind me, I heard the whisper again, louder this time. "You can't escape me." I moved into my new apartment, hoping for a fresh start once more. But even now, sometimes when the lights are low and the night is quiet, I see a shadow in the corner of my eye, and I hear that whisper, echoing in the back of my mind. "You can't escape me. I don't know if I ever will."